Commander Hannah Park stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, humanity's first true warship built for the stars. Her uniform was crisp and dark, bearing the new emblem of Earth's United Defense Force, a planet breaking free from chains. The ship hummed around her, alive with energy and purpose. "Status report," she said quietly. Lieutenant Ta Kim looked up from his station. "All systems at optimal capacity, Commander. Jump drives charged to 100%. Weapons systems online. Stealth systems functioning." Hannah nodded and walked to the main view screen. It showed only stars now, the peaceful void of space that had been humanity's prison for 3 centuries. She thought of her grandmother, who had told her stories passed down through generations, stories of the day the massive hegemony ships first appeared in Earth's skies. "They came with sweet words and promises of friendship," her grandmother had said. "Then they built their monitoring stations and told us we weren't ready to join the galactic community, that we were too violent, too unpredictable. By the time Earth realized the truth, that they were being quarantined, harvested, and studied like lab animals, it was too late. The hegemony's technology was too advanced. Or so they thought." "The hegemony outpost is exactly where intelligence said it would be," reported Officer Sun, the young woman at the sensor station. "Their patrol patterns remain unchanged. They have no idea we're here." "They've grown complacent," said Colonel G, the oldest member of the bridge crew. 300 years of watching us chase our tails has made them careless." Hannah traced her finger along the edge of the command console. "Complacency is a weakness we will exploit today." She turned to address the bridge crew. 20 faces looked back at her, the best Earth had to offer, selected from a program that had operated in secret for generations. For 3 centuries, they'd watched us from orbit. They've taken our people for experiments. They've stolen our resources. They've denied us our rightful place among the stars. Hannah's voice remained steady, but everyone could feel the steel beneath her words. "Today, we show them their mistake." She pressed the ship-wide communication button. "All hands, prepare for jump. Operation Reckoning begins in 5 minutes." Throughout the massive ship, 500 crew members secured stations and readied themselves. Many clasped small tokens, family photos, religious symbols, or simply Earth soil sealed in tiny containers. They had trained for this day their entire lives. "Lieutenant Kim, final checks on the jump coordinates," Hannah ordered. Tay's fingers moved rapidly across his console. "Coordinates verified. We will emerge directly behind the moon of Outpost Station KH-7. "Perfect," Hannah said. "Their sensors will be blind to our approach until we're practically on top of them." The Vengeance was humanity's masterpiece, a ship built in secret deep within Mars's Valles Marineris, using technology reverse-engineered from crashed hegemony scout vessels. For decades, Earth had salvaged what they could, studied what they found, and slowly built the knowledge needed to fight back. 2 minutes to jump," announced the computer's voice. Colonel G approached Hannah quietly. "I remember when we couldn't even get a rover to Mars without issues," he said with a small smile. "Now look at us." Hannah nodded. "They never expected us to advance this quickly. That's always been their mistake, underestimating human determination." 1 minute to jump. Hannah returned to her command chair and fastened the safety harness. Jump technology was still new to humans, adapted from hegemony designs, but never tested at this scale. "All sections report ready," Commander said Ta. "Communications blackout engage," added Officer Sun. "Earth Command sends their final message. Remember who we fight for." Hannah took a deep breath. Around her, the bridge crew braced themselves for humanity's first act of interstellar defiance. 30 seconds. The ship's engines began to emit a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through the deck plates. Lights dimmed momentarily as power was diverted to the jump drives. 10 seconds. "For Earth," Hannah whispered. Jump initiated. The universe seemed to fold around the Vengeance. For a fraction of a second, every crew member felt as though they existed everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Then reality snapped back into focus. "Jump complete," announced Ta, his voice slightly strained. "Position confirmed. We are exactly where we need to be." The view screen showed a desolate moon, and beyond it, the gleaming structure of Hegemony Outpost KH7. The station resembled a massive silver spider with a central hub connected to 8 radiating arms. Around it, small patrol ships moved in predictable patterns. "They haven't detected us," reported Sun excitedly. "The stealth systems are working." Hana leaned forward in her chair. "Weapons status." "Fully charged and locked," responded Weapons Officer Mun. "Targeting solutions ready for your command." Hana studied the outpost on the screen. This particular station had been chosen carefully. It was a communications hub that linked several hegemony sectors, but had minimal civilian presence. The goal wasn't to cause needless death, but to send an unmistakable message. "Target their communications array first," she ordered. "Then their sensor grid, power core, and defense systems, in that order." "Targets locked," confirmed Mun. Hana stood from her chair. "This is for every human they've taken. For every lie they've told. For 300 years of treating us like children or animals." She paused, then gave the order that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. "Fire." The Vengeance's main weapons, plasma cannons derived from hegemony technology but refined by human innovation, blazed to life. Brilliant blue-white energy lanced across space and struck the outpost's communications array with devastating precision. The effect was immediate. The massive dish exploded in a shower of debris and fire, leaving the outpost temporarily blind and mute. "Direct hit," exclaimed Mun. "Communications array destroyed." "Second volley firing," announced Ta. Before the stunned hegemony personnel could respond, the Vengeance struck again, taking out the sensor grid. Patrol ships began to scramble, but they moved in confusion without central coordination. The bridge crew watched in astonished silence as their years of planning unfolded perfectly. The outpost's shields, which had never been designed to withstand an attack from human technology, collapsed under the third barrage. "Message coming in from Earth Command," reported Sun. "All attacks across the system are proceeding as planned. Operation Reckoning is a go in all sectors." For the first time in centuries, humanity was fighting back. Across the solar system, hidden ships and installations were launching simultaneous strikes against hegemony targets. Hana allowed herself a small smile as she watched the crippled outpost drift helplessly. "Then it begins," she said softly, but with unmistakable resolve. "Send the prepared message on all hegemony frequencies." Moments later, every hegemony communication device received the same simple message in their own language. Humanity is no longer contained. The reckoning has come. The Vengeance drifted in the shadow of a gas giant, its energy systems running on minimal power. 2 weeks had passed since the first strikes against the hegemony, and Commander Hannah Park studied the battle reports on her tablet. Humanity's surprise attack had succeeded beyond all expectations. 7 outposts destroyed, 3 monitoring stations captured intact, 5 supply convoys seized with valuable resources. "The hegemony is scrambling their fleets," said Colonel Jin Lee, entering the command center with fresh intelligence. "They've pulled ships from 4 sectors to hunt us." Hana nodded without looking up. "Good. That leaves their other territories vulnerable, just as we planned." "There's something else," Jin added, his voice dropping. "A ship just appeared at the edge of our sensor range. It's small, using outdated engines. Definitely not hegemony design." Now Hana looked up, her eyes sharp. "Pirates?" "No, they're broadcasting a universal peace signal. They'd want to talk." Hana set down her tablet. This was unexpected. "Could be a trap." "My thoughts exactly," Jin agreed. "But our long-range scans show only one life form aboard. If it's a trap, it's not much of one." Hana considered their options. Humanity had been isolated for so long that they knew very little about other species beyond the hegemony. This could be valuable. Bring them in, she decided. Full security protocols. I want 2 squads in the docking bay, and 1 more outside the meeting room. 90 minutes later, Hannah stood in the secure conference room as the airlock door slid open. What emerged was unlike anything she had seen before. The visitor stood slightly taller than a human, with a body resembling an earth mantis, but with 6 limbs instead of 4. Its exoskeleton gleamed with shifting colors, blues, purples, and greens that moved like oil on water. 2 large compound eyes focused on Hannah immediately. "I am Sook," the creature said, the words coming through a small translation device attached to what appeared to be its neck. The voice sounded feminine, with a strange clicking undertone. "I represent the Korathi Assembly. We come in peace and friendship." Jin Lee stood slightly behind Hannah, his hand resting near his sidearm. "How did you find us?" he asked bluntly. The alien's colors shifted to deeper blues. "Your attack on the hegemony has created quite a disturbance. We've been watching for such an opportunity for generations." Hannah gestured to the conference table. "Please sit, if you can." "Thank you." Sook folded her lower limbs in a way that allowed her to rest comfortably at the table. "My species has a saying, 'The enemy of my oppressor is my natural ally.'" "So the hegemony is your enemy too," Hannah observed. "Enemy is too simple a word. They are our masters, our jailers, our parasites." Sook's colors flashed red briefly. "They came to our worlds 12 generations ago, with promises of protection and advancement. By the time we understood their true purpose, they had already established control." Jin remained standing, his posture stiff. "And what exactly is their true purpose?" Sook reached into a small pouch and removed what looked like a data crystal. "May I?" Hannah nodded, and Sook placed the crystal on the table. Immediately, a holographic display appeared above it, a map of the galaxy, with hundreds of points marked in different colors. The blue points are worlds the hegemony has fully integrated into their empire. The yellow are worlds under observation, like yours was. The red are worlds they have harvested to extinction. Hannah stared at the map. The scale of the hegemony's empire was far larger than they had estimated. "Why are some worlds harvested and others just watched?" Jin asked. "Resource value versus potential threat," Sook explained. "The hegemony has ruled this section of the galaxy for over 10,000 years by following a simple strategy. Identify species with potential, isolate them until their usefulness can be determined, then either absorb or eliminate them." Hannah pointed to Earth's position on the map. "And us? Why just watch us for 300 years?" Sook's colors shifted to a thoughtful green. "Your species presents a unique problem for them. Humans adapt too quickly. You learn, you change, you overcome. Most importantly, you remember wrongs done to you and seek to right them. The hegemony finds such traits concerning." Jin frowned. "So they were afraid of us?" "Not initially. At first, they simply found you interesting. But as they observed your rapid technological development, their interest became caution. And after the incident with the research vessel—" "What research vessel?" Hannah interrupted. Sook's colors darkened. "You don't know. 83 years ago, one of their biological research ships crashed in your northern hemisphere. The humans who found it managed to access its database before the hegemony recovery team arrived. The information they discovered about the hegemony's true nature was disturbing." Hannah and Jin exchanged glances. There were rumors about a crash in Russia decades ago, but nothing confirmed. "That was when they tightened your quarantine," Sook continued. "They realized you might advance quickly enough to become a genuine threat." "And they were right," Jin said with a hint of pride. Sook's colors brightened. "Yes, you are the first species in thousands of years to successfully strike back against them. That is why I am here." She manipulated the hologram, zooming in on specific regions. "These green markers represent other subjugated species who, like my people, maintain some independence while under hegemony control. Many have been quietly resisting for centuries. Why haven't you united before now? Hannah asked. The hegemony keeps us isolated from each other. They control all interstellar communications and travel. Different species are told different stories about the galaxy. Some are told they are the only intelligent life besides the hegemony. Others are told that outside species are savage and dangerous. Jin's suspicion was plain on his face. Why should we trust you? This could be an elaborate hegemony trick. Sook's colors flickered rapidly. A valid concern. But consider this. If the hegemony could have stopped your attack, they would have. They did not. They are vulnerable, and they know it. She adjusted the hologram again, revealing the new layer of information. Hegemony fleet movements, defense systems, supply lines. This is current tactical information that could help your next strikes, Sook said. Consider it a gesture of good faith. Hannah studied the data, her mind racing with possibilities. What exactly are you proposing? An alliance, not just with the Korathi, but with all who suffer under hegemony rule. Together, we could achieve what none of us could do alone. And after, Jin pressed, if we defeat the hegemony, what then? Who takes their place? Sook's colors became a calm blue. That is the most important question. Power vacuums lead to chaos. We must have a plan for after victory. Hours passed as they discussed possibilities. Sook shared stories of other subjugated species, the crystalline loomer who could process information at incredible speeds, the gaseous Voth who could survive in environments lethal to most life, the aquatic Miri whose biotechnology surpassed even the hegemonies. Late into the ship's night cycle, Hannah finally called for a break. She asked Jin to escort Sook to guest quarters while she consulted with her senior officers. The debate among Earth's leadership was intense. Some saw a tremendous opportunity in Sook's proposal. Others warned of the risks of trusting unknown aliens. Alone in her quarters, Hannah reviewed everything they had learned. If Sook was telling the truth, humanity was not facing the hegemony alone. But if this was a trap, she thought of Earth, of the generations who had lived under hegemony surveillance, of the people who had disappeared for studies, of the resources taken, of the stars denied to them. By morning, she had made her decision. She gathered her officers in the command center. We will form a coalition, she told them firmly. Not just for vengeance, but for justice. Not just for Earth, but for all species who have suffered. Jin looked concerned. Commander, the risks are considerable, Hannah finished for him. So are the potential rewards. We've struck the first blow, but we cannot defeat the hegemony alone. None of us can. She looked around at their faces, the future of humanity's first interstellar force. We came out here to settle a score, she said quietly. But I think we found something more important. A chance to build something better than what the hegemony created. A galaxy where species help each other instead of exploiting each other. She straightened her uniform. Let's go tell our new ally that humanity accepts her offer. 1 month after meeting Sook, the Vengeance docked with the massive space station that had become the Coalition's hidden headquarters. The station orbited a dead star in a system the hegemony had abandoned centuries ago, making it the perfect meeting place. Hannah walked the curved corridor toward the main conference room, nodding to aliens of different species as she passed. The Coalition now included 7 different peoples united against the hegemony. The insect-like Korathi, the 4-armed Miri, the floating Voth, the silicon-based Loomer, the shadow-dwelling Nax, the tree-like Arbori, and humans. Commander Park called Dr. Dasong, hurrying to catch up with her. The young scientist carried several data tablets under his arm. I have something important to show you. Walk with me, Hannah said. The Leadership Council meets in 10 minutes. They continued toward the conference room as Dai activated one of his tablets. We've been analyzing the combined intelligence from all Coalition members, and we've discovered something remarkable about the hegemony. He showed her a complex diagram that resembled a neural network. Their entire command structure operates through a telepathic network. It's how they coordinate their vast empire across such great distances. Hannah studied the diagram. They communicate through thoughts. More than communicate, De explained excitedly. They share consciousness. It's why they've been so successful for thousands of years. No miscommunication, no confusion during battle, perfect coordination. They entered the conference room, where representatives from all 7 species waited. Sook stood at the far end, her exoskeleton shimmering with anticipation colors. Next to her, the tree-like arbory representative swayed gently, while the crystalline loomer sparkled under the lights. Commander Park brings important news, Day announced to the group. He projected his findings onto the main display so all could see. The hegemony's telepathic network is both their greatest strength and their greatest weakness, he continued. If we can disrupt it, their entire empire will fall into chaos. The Miri representative, a blue-skinned being with 4 arms, leaned forward. We've known of this network for generations, but found no way to interfere with it. Their psychic abilities are too powerful. That's where humans come in, Daz said, looking at Hannah. Our analysis shows that humans are naturally resistant to their telepathic influence. Hannah's eyes widened with sudden understanding. That's why they feared us. Exactly, Daz confirmed. Most species in the galaxy have some level of telepathic ability, or at least sensitivity. Humans are unusual. Your minds are completely closed to outside influence. The ghostly Voth representative, who existed as a swirling mist inside a containment field, pulsed with excitement. This explains why they kept Earth quarantined for so long. You weren't just dangerous because of your adaptability. You were immune to their greatest weapon. The council erupted in discussion as the implications became clear. Hannah listened to the different perspectives, then raised her hand for silence. Where is this network controlled from? She asked. Day switched to a new display showing a massive space station near the galactic core. Here, the Nexus. It's the most heavily defended installation in hegemony space, and also their greatest vulnerability, added Sook. If we could plant disruptors inside the Nexus, we could collapse their entire command structure. For hours, they debated strategy. The Nexus was surrounded by defense platforms, patrolled by hundreds of warships, and protected by the most advanced security systems in the galaxy. A direct assault would fail, said the Nax representative, a shadowy figure who stayed in the darkest corner of the room. But a small infiltration team might succeed, if they were human. All eyes turned to Hannah. I'll lead the infiltration team, she announced. Colonel Jin Lee, who had been quietly observing until now, stepped forward. Commander, that's too risky. You're too valuable to the coalition. No one else can ensure the mission's success, she replied firmly. This is why humanity joined this fight. This is how we make a difference. 3 days later, Hannah stood in the loading bay of a small stealth ship with 5 other humans. Each wore specialized armor developed by the Loomer, designed to mask their heat signatures and absorb energy from sensors. The plan is simple, Hannah told her team. We get dropped off during the supply shipment window. We move through the maintenance tunnels to the central core. We plant the disruptors at the marked locations. We get out before they activate. Ensign Jun Ba, the youngest member of the team, checked his equipment for the 3rd time. His family had been among those taken for hegemony studies years ago. He never saw them again. What happens to the hegemony after we do this? He asked quietly. Their ships and stations will lose coordination, Hannah explained. Their command structure will collapse. The coalition fleet will move in to secure key positions. And then, Hannah looked at him carefully. Then we establish a new order, one based on cooperation, not domination. June didn't look convinced. They deserve worse for what they've done. The ship jolted as it undocked from the station. Through the viewport, they watched the coalition headquarters disappear behind them. Ahead lay the most dangerous mission any human had ever undertaken. The journey to the Nexus took 16 hours in the specially modified ship. They traveled through forgotten trade routes mapped by the Arbory and hidden quantum corridors discovered by the Loomer. Finally, they approached the massive Nexus station. It resembled a giant brain, with curved sections connected by glowing pathways. Energy pulses moved through these connections like thoughts firing across neurons. Supply ship NT-447, requesting docking clearance, transmitted their pilot, a Kurathi skilled in hegemony protocols. After tense moments, the response came. Clearance granted. Proceed to Dock 7. Once docked, Hana and her team slipped into the station through maintenance hatches, while the Kurathi crew distracted the dock workers with supply issues. Inside, the corridors pulsed with eerie blue light. Hegemony officials moved purposefully through the main hallways, their elongated heads and pale skin marking them as the ruling elite. "They can't sense us," whispered Kai, the team's security specialist. "It's like we're ghosts to them." "Stay focused," Hana replied. "We have 40 minutes to reach the central chamber." They moved through service tunnels and ventilation shafts, following the route mapped from intelligence provided by all coalition members. At 2 points, they had to freeze as maintenance drones passed nearby. Finally, they'd reached the central core, a vast spherical chamber filled with a swirling energy field. This was the heart of the telepathic network, the nexus point from which the hegemony controlled their vast empire. "Plant the disruptors according to the plan," Hana ordered. 3 minutes to place them. Then we move to extraction. The team spread out, attaching the small devices developed by Loomer and Miri engineers to specific points around the chamber. Each disruptor was designed to interfere with the telepathic frequencies used by the hegemony. As June placed his device, he paused, looking at the swirling energy. "Commander," he said softly, "we could recalibrate these to create a feedback loop. It wouldn't just disrupt their network, it would burn out their minds. All of them." The others stopped to listen. "We could end the hegemony forever," Jun continued, his voice tight with emotion. "For everything they've done to us. To everyone." Hana moved to his side. "Then we become what we hate," she responded. "We deliver justice, not extinction." "Is there justice for what they did to my family?" Jun asked. Hana put her hand on his shoulder. "We're building a better galaxy, Jun. Not just destroying an old one." After a moment, he nodded and set the disruptor to its original settings. "Devices planted," reported Kai. 30 seconds to activation. "Move to extraction point," Hana ordered. They had almost reached the maintenance access when alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. Something had gone wrong. "Run," Hana shouted as security forces appeared at the far end of the corridor. The team sprinted for the exit as energy weapons fired around them. Kai fell first, struck in the back. Then Diego, the communications specialist. Hana, Jun, and the remaining team member, Min, reached the access hatch. "Get through," Hana ordered as she returned fire. Min crawled through. As Jun started to follow, a blast hit the wall beside him, sending shrapnel into his leg. He stumbled. "Go," he shouted to Hana, pulling out detonators from his pack. "I'll hold them off." "Jun." "No." Hana tried to pull him toward the hatch. "Someone has to make sure those disruptors activate," he said, his eyes clear and determined. "Get to the ship. Make this count." Before she could argue, the disruptors activated. Throughout the station, hegemony officials clutched their heads in pain as their telepathic network began to collapse. "Go now." Jun pushed her toward the hatch and turned to face the oncoming security forces. Hana made it through, sealing the hatch behind her. She and Min barely reached the ship before the station's defenses recovered enough to target them. As they pulled away from the Nexus, they watched the massive structure flicker with power surges. The telepathic network was failing, just as planned. But the success came at a terrible cost. Half the team, including Jun, never made it back to the extraction point. In the ship's small cabin, Hana clutched the mission badge Jun had given her before they landed, a simple earth tree growing from broken chains. "For a better galaxy," she whispered, as the stars streaked past on their journey home. The massive space station Concordia hung in the void between stars, its silver hull gleaming in the light of a distant sun. Once a pleasure palace for hegemony elites, it now served as neutral ground for the most important meeting in galactic history. Admiral Hannah Parks stood at the viewport of her shuttle, gazing at the gathered fleet. Over 300 ships from 24 different species had assembled here, former slaves and subjects of the hegemony now united as equals. The sight filled her with quiet pride. "We're cleared to dock, Admiral," said the pilot. Hannah nodded and smoothed her new uniform. 6 months had passed since the mission to disable the hegemony's telepathic network. The aftermath had been chaotic but successful. Without their perfect coordination, hegemony forces had fallen into disarray. The coalition had moved quickly, capturing key installations and liberating subjugated worlds. Now the remaining hegemony leadership had no choice but to negotiate. The shuttle docked with a gentle bump. Colonel Jin Lee waited at the airlock, his face solemn. "They're all assembled," he reported. "Every surviving member of the Hegemony High Council, and representatives from 24 liberated species." "Any trouble?" Hannah asked as they walked through the docking bay. "Nothing serious. The hegemony delegates tried to demand special treatment. They're not used to being treated as equals." Hannah allowed herself a small smile. "They'll need to adjust to many new things." They entered a vast circular chamber. The walls were lined with delegation booths, each occupied by representatives of different species. In the center stood a round table where 7 hegemony leaders sat, tall, pale beings with elongated heads and 6-fingered hands. Their customary robes of office had been replaced with simple gray garments. As Hannah entered, a hush fell over the room. All eyes, sensory organs, and perception apparatuses turned toward her. She took her place at the speaker's podium, with Jin and 2 other human officers flanking her. Behind her stood Suk and the other founding members of the coalition. "I am Admiral Hannah Park of Earth," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "We gather today to address the crimes of the galactic hegemony and to establish a new order for all sentient beings." She activated the central display, which projected images across the chamber. Worlds stripped of resources, species reduced to servitude, cultural artifacts destroyed. For over 10,000 years, the hegemony has ruled through deception, force, and exploitation. They have presented themselves as benevolent guardians, while systematically harvesting resources, suppressing advancement, and destroying those who resisted. The hegemony representatives remained silent, their faces impassive. "The evidence has been compiled from your own records," Hannah continued, "accessed when your network collapsed. There can be no denial." She displayed more images. Secret laboratories where captured beings were studied and experimented upon. Worlds reduced to barren rock after their resources were exhausted. Species classified as eliminated after resisting hegemony control. "You will be held accountable," she declared to the assembled hegemony leaders. "Not through revenge, but through justice." For hours, representatives from formerly subjugated worlds presented their testimonies. The Arbory spoke of forests harvested to extinction. The Miri described generations of forced labor. The Voth detailed how their homeworld's atmosphere had been poisoned to make them dependent on hegemony technology. Throughout it all, the hegemony leaders remained stoic. Too stoic, Hannah thought. They seemed almost unconcerned. When the testimonies concluded, the lead hegemony representative, Supreme Overseer Tall, finally spoke. "You mistake our purpose," he said, his voice smooth and reasonable. "Everything we did was to maintain order in a chaotic galaxy. Yes, sacrifices were necessary. But without our guidance, you would have destroyed yourselves long ago. Like you nearly destroyed the Nax." Hannah challenged. "The Nax were developing weapons that could have destabilized an entire sector," Tall replied calmly. "We acted for the greater good." "And Earth?" Hannah asked. "What threat did we pose?" "Your species adapts too quickly. You would have upset the balance we maintained for millennia." Jin stepped forward. You mean the balance that kept you in power. Tal simply inclined his head. We accept that change has come. We are prepared to discuss terms for a peaceful transition. Something in his tone worried Hannah. The hegemony had ruled for thousands of years. Would they really surrender so easily? As the formal negotiations began, Hannah received a coded message on her personal device. It was from Earth Defense Command. Unknown energy signature detected approaching Sol system. Pattern matches prohibited weapon technology. A cold feeling settled in Hannah's stomach. She showed the message to Jin, who immediately began coordinating with their ships. Tal was watching her closely. Too closely. Is something wrong, Admiral? He asked with false concern. Hannah met his gaze. You launched a weapon toward Earth, didn't you? This negotiation is just a distraction. A slight smile touched Tal's thin lips. Insurance, Admiral. A prudent leader always maintains options. Hannah's communicator buzzed again with a more detailed report. The approaching object was a planet killer, a forbidden weapon capable of destabilizing the planet's core. How did you access it? She demanded. Those weapons were supposedly destroyed centuries ago. We never destroy useful tools, Tal replied. We merely store them where they cannot be misused. Hannah turned to Jin. Prepare the fleet. Then she addressed the chamber. The hegemony has launched a doomsday weapon toward Earth while pretending to negotiate peace. This meeting is suspended. As she turned to leave, Tal called after her. You cannot stop it, Admiral. By the time you reach Earth, it will be too late. But we could recall it, for the right concessions. Hannah didn't bother to respond. Within minutes, she was aboard the Vengeance, coordinating with coalition forces. All coalition ships, Defensive Formation Omega, she ordered over the fleet-wide channel. We intercept at the quantum boundary. The coalition fleet, over 200 ships strong, jumped into hyperspace. Behind them, the remaining hegemony representatives were taken into custody by coalition security forces. They emerged near the edge of Earth's solar system, directly in the path of the approaching weapon. It was massive, a dark sphere surrounded by crackling energy fields. Time to impact, Hannah asked. 17 minutes, Admiral, replied the tactical officer. All ships engage according to plan, Hannah ordered. Focus fire on the outer containment field. The battle that followed pushed the coalition fleet to its limits. The planet killer was protected by automated defense systems that fired relentlessly at approaching ships. Energy beams lashed out, destroying smaller vessels instantly. Larger ships took hit after hit, their shields failing under the onslaught. We're losing too many, Jin reported grimly as another coalition cruiser exploded. And we've barely damaged the outer field. Hannah watched the tactical display, calculating options. The weapon was now 12 minutes from Earth. Ready the GIF, she ordered. Jin looked surprised. Admiral, it's never been tested at this scale. We're out of options, Hannah replied. Have all ships pull back to safe distance. As the coalition ships retreated, the Vengeance moved forward alone. In its central hold was humanity's most closely guarded secret, a device developed from concepts found in the crashed hegemony research ship decades ago. GIF charged to maximum, reported the chief engineer. But ma'am, this could destroy us too. If Earth falls, nothing else matters, Hannah said quietly. She opened the ship-wide channel. All hands, brace for extreme gravitational distortion. With 8 minutes remaining before the weapon reached Earth, Hannah gave the order. Activate the gravitational inversion field. A pulse of energy shot from the Vengeance, striking the planet killer dead center. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then space itself began to warp around the weapon. It's working, whispered Jin. The planet killer's mass began to fold in on itself, creating a localized gravity well that grew stronger by the second. The weapon's energy field flickered and failed as it was pulled into the growing distortion. The GIF is creating a temporary singularity, explained the science officer. It's using the weapon's own mass against it. For one terrifying moment, A miniature black hole formed where the planet killer had been. It pulsed once, twice, then collapsed, leaving nothing but empty space. The bridge crew stared in stunned silence at the view screen. Did we just create and destroy a black hole? Jin finally asked. Hannah released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Apparently we did. Throughout the coalition fleet, cheers erupted as the news spread. On dozens of worlds, beings of all species watched in awe as the impossible happened. Humans had not only defeated the hegemony, but had mastered gravity itself to save their homeworld. On the Vengeance's bridge, Hannah thought of June and the others who hadn't lived to see this day. We did it, she whispered. We really did it. She straightened her uniform and turned to her communications officer. Send a message to Concordia. Tell them Earth is safe and we're ready to resume negotiations. She paused, then added, and make sure the hegemony representatives have a good view of the recording of what just happened. The galaxy would never be the same again. Spring sunlight streamed through the tall windows of New Geneva's Grand Assembly Hall. The building had been constructed over the past year specifically for this day, a day many once thought impossible. Its architecture blended styles from across the galaxy, with soaring crystal arches inspired by Loomer design, living wood pillars contributed by the Arbory, and gravity-defying water features developed by the Miri. Hannah Park stood at the edge of the crowded hall, watching beings from over 50 different species mingle freely. She wore a formal white uniform with the new insignia of the Galactic Cooperative, a simple circle of stars surrounding a stylized hand, tentacle, branch, and light beam reaching toward each other. They're ready for you, Ambassador, said Mina, her young assistant. Ambassador. The title still felt strange to Hannah. For most of her life, she had been a soldier, trained to fight an enemy that had imprisoned her species for centuries. Now, 1 year after the Battle of Earth's salvation, she represented humanity to the galaxy. She nodded to Mina and made her way through the crowd toward the central stage. Many stopped her to bow, salute, or perform their species' gesture of respect. Others simply reached out to touch her arm or shoulder, a connection to the woman who had changed the course of galactic history. Jin Lee waited for her at the side of the stage. The years of struggle had left visible marks on his face, but today his eyes were bright. Ready? He asked. As I'll ever be, she replied. Together, they walked onto the stage where representatives from each member species waited. At the center stood a simple pedestal holding the Galactic Charter of Rights, a document that had taken a full year to create. Its first line read, "All sentient beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights." Hannah took her place at the speaker's position, looking out over the assembled delegates. Humans mingled with former enemies and newfound allies. In the front row sat the surviving members of her original crew from the Vengeance. Behind them were the families of those who hadn't survived to see this day. 1 year ago, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. We stood at the edge of destruction. The hegemony, which had ruled for 10,000 years, was willing to destroy an entire world rather than accept change. The room fell silent as everyone remembered that desperate battle. We prevailed not just through strength of arms, but through the power of cooperation. Species that had never known each other, separated by the hegemony's policy of isolation, came together for a common cause. She gestured to the document before her. Today we formalize that cooperation. The Galactic Charter of Rights establishes principles that will guide us all: freedom, equality, justice, and peace. No single species will rule over others. No world will be exploited for the benefit of another. No being will be denied the right to determine their own future. One by one, representatives came forward to sign the charter. First came Sook, her exoskeleton shimmering with formal ceremonial colors. Then the Miri representative, the Loomer elder, the Voth counselor, and dozens more. Among the last to sign were 3 hegemony representatives. Their people, stripped of military might and colonial possessions, had been reformed into a single-system government. Many of their former leaders had faced justice for specific crimes, but most ordinary hegemony citizens had been welcomed into the new galactic community. It had been Hana who argued most strongly for this approach, reminding everyone that true justice required healing, not merely punishment. When all had signed, Hana raised the document for all to see. Let this mark the beginning of a new era, not dominated by any single vision, but enriched by our differences and strengthened by our common purpose. The hall erupted in cheers, applause, and various expressions of approval unique to each species. As the formal ceremony concluded, the gathering transitioned to a celebration. Musicians from a dozen worlds performed together, creating harmonies never before heard. Food and drink from countless cultures were shared freely. Hana found a moment to slip away to a quiet balcony overlooking the rebuilt skyline of Geneva. The city had been transformed by alien influences, buildings with impossible shapes, parks filled with exotic but compatible plant life, and transportation systems that defied old human limitations. Above, ships from dozens of worlds hovered in the evening sky, their lights twinkling like new constellations. "There you are," said a familiar voice. Suk stepped onto the balcony, her colors shifting to the blue-green pattern that Hana had learned indicated friendly relaxation. "Did you ever imagine this day would come?" Suk asked, moving to stand beside her. Hana smiled slightly. "I imagined vengeance," she admitted. "I never dreamed of this." "That's why it worked," Suk replied. "You were able to move beyond revenge to something greater. Many species would not have made that choice." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "The Miri delegation has proposed establishing a joint research facility in their home system," Suk said eventually. "Their underwater laboratories combined with human innovation could lead to remarkable medical advances. And the Lumer are offering to teach their crystal computing methods to anyone who wishes to learn," Hana added. "Technology that the hegemony kept for themselves for millennia is now being freely shared." The balcony door opened again, and Jin joined them. "The Arbory representative is telling everyone about their plan to restore ecosystems on worlds damaged by hegemony mining," he reported. "They're asking for human biologists to help." "We'll send our best," Hana promised. Jin leaned against the railing, looking out at the city where humans and aliens now walked together freely. "Was it worth it?" he asked quietly. Hana knew he was thinking of the costs. The lives lost, the sacrifices made. She thought of young Junba, who had stayed behind to ensure their mission succeeded. Of the crew members who died in that final battle to save Earth. Of countless others across many species who had fought for this day. "They wanted to settle the score," she said softly. "I think we did something better. We balanced it." Below them, a group of hegemony children played with human and Korathi youngsters in a park, their natural differences forgotten in the universal joy of games. None of them would grow up knowing the bitter divisions of the past. Later that night, as the celebrations continued, Hana visited the memorial that had been built near the assembly hall. It contained the names of all who had fallen in the struggle for freedom, not just humans, but beings from every coalition species. She traced her fingers over Jun's name, remembering his final words. "Make this count." "We did," she whispered. A small boy approached the memorial, looking up at Hana with curious eyes. "Are you really Admiral Park?" he asked. "The one who saved Earth?" Hana knelt to his level. "I helped," she said gently. "But it took many people from many worlds working together. I want to be like you when I grow up," the boy declared. "I want to go to the stars and meet new people." "You will," Hana promised. "But you won't have to fight wars to do it. You'll go as an explorer, a friend, a builder." As she watched the boy run back to his parents, one human, one clearly not, Hana felt a sense of peace she had never expected to find. The hegemony had feared humanity's dangerous potential, their ability to adapt, to overcome, to remember wrongs and seek to right them. But they had missed humanity's greater potential, to forgive, to cooperate, to build something better from the ruins of conflict. In the years that followed, the galaxy would discover that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its capacity for vengeance, but its ability to imagine and create new possibilities. The qualities that had made humans dangerous to the old order made them invaluable to the new one. As Earth became a central hub for interspecies cooperation and technological exchange, the stars filled with ships carrying humans outward not as conquerors or avengers, but as partners, healers, teachers, and students. And on countless worlds, beings who had once feared each other now worked side by side, carrying forward the lesson that would echo across the stars for generations to come. That true justice isn't about settling scores, but about building a future where such scores no longer need to be kept.